I've been looking forward to doing this video for a long time. Sent to me by a subscriber, I would say almost 2 months ago, so very close to when my channel began. And it's basically written by a PUA who is using the argumentation of, oh, well, Mgtow are just bitter losers who can't get laid, and this is the reason that they're Mgtow, and Mgtow is no way for men to go. Now, I already did a video about how utterly irrelevant that argument is, so let's get into the article itself. Why Men Going Their Own Way is No Way for Men to Go. The Creeping Cult of Male Loserdom by Mgtow. In the past few months, Men Going Their Own Way has completed its devolution from a sensible philosophy of masculinity into a cult for lonely virgins. While I never identified as Mgtow myself, the old guard Mgtow blog No Ma'am, whose owner Rob Fetters has become so embarrassed by what Mgtow has become that he's almost wiped out all mention of it from his site, was a huge influence on my thinking. Indeed, it was my introduction to anti-feminist thought in general. Quote, the men who created the Mgtow philosophy a decade ago, Zed, Ragnar, Rob Fetters, I don't know who any of these people are, were learned men who'd seen the horrors of second and third wave feminism firsthand. They rode motorcycles, banged girls, and read books. He spells Mgtow, M-I-G-T-O-W. I'm presuming that he thinks that that's clever because he's making fun of how we say Mgtow as opposed to going through the ludicrously long, tongue twister of Mgtow every time we fucking want to say Mgtow. But I guess that's what passes for clever in this man's, the vacuous void between this man's ears. So let's get back to the article. Quote, as it exists now, Mgtow has become a lonely hearts club for the refuse of the male species. Not only are the virgins going their own way, personally repellent losers, their philosophy, quote unquote, is completely wrong-headed. End quote. Should be interesting to see how how Mr. Forney wants to reason to us that our philosophy is completely wrong-headed. Completely wrong-headed. It's a very bold statement considering this guy was more or less, a Mgtow in spirit, according to the original Mgtow manifesto. So he goes from being pretty supportive of Mgtow to thinking that it is completely wrong-headed. Let's see how he makes this jump. Quote, men going their own way will never appeal to anything more than the rejects of American society because it's a philosophy that denies the fundamental nature of human beings. End quote. So, this guy is going to teach us. Get ready, men. This powerful ancient guru, this wise sage of mysticism and understanding is going to impart to us imbeciles the fundamental nature of human beings. This man, Mr. Forney, has all the answers. So let's see what he has to say. Quote, one common talking point of Mgtow's, M-I-G-T-O-W-S, he's going to spell it that way for the rest of the article, gentlemen, is that their beliefs represent a completely new take on masculinity, the rejection of male subservience to women, or quote-unquote pussy worship, as the perma-virgins call it. This shows how historically illiterate and arrogant they are. Spiritual and philosophical movements focused on celibacy and the denial of base urges have a long pedigree in human history, from early Buddhism and Jainism in India to the Catholic priesthood, monastic orders such as the Trappist, and quasi-Christian offshoots such as the Shakers, end quote. The rejection of male subservience to women being a new take on masculinity? 5 minutes of research would have changed Mr. Forney's opinion on that, but 5 minutes was evidently 5 minutes too much in terms of research for this man. And because Mr. Forney is so oddly specific in providing a historical example which delineates a rejection of male subservience by men to women on spiritual or philosophical grounds exclusively, he suggests that he himself may in fact be historically illiterate by failing to provide an example illustrating that men were in fact, throughout the course of history, not subservient to women throughout most rungs of society, not just the spiritual or philosophical ones. Now he may or may not have known that, but all we can tell from his writing is that either his writing style sucks and he's unpersuasive, or he is historically illiterate and his writing style sucks. Additionally, he amusingly insinuates a false dichotomy logical fallacy wherein one either supplicates to women or is celibate on religious grounds. I'm pretty sure he didn't intend for this, but through that insinuation, we can further deduce that he most likely equates subservience to women with getting laid in his own personal life. Now, it's pretty unsurprising to see a man who would write an article like this, unprovoked by the Mgtow community, subconsciously communicate that he is supplicated in his own frustrated personal life in order to accrue whatever meager lays he himself has procured with the crutch of pickup artistry. But through this paragraph, we have also ascertained that he is at best intellectually lazy and at worst intellectually dishonest. Good to know. Quote, while it might inflate the bloated ego of the average Mgtow to be compared to great religious movements of the past and present, Mgtow fails on even that front. Monks and nuns don't take vows because they're angry at not being able to get a date. They choose their lifestyles because they want to become closer to God. Mgtow doesn't choose our philosophy because we can't get a date. We choose it because we see and recognize the misandry of our zeitgeist and how the game is essentially rigged against us in divorce court, and how pair bonding relationships are pretty much detrimental to us. It's not because we can't get a date. So you can just say that about us as well. Quote, aside from avoiding women, parenthetical, in actuality being rejected by them, in parenthetical, Mgtows, you see what he did there? He replaced men with virgins. This is the extent to which this man considers himself clever. Indulge in every vice available to them, from Cheetos to video games to masturbation. Their lifestyles are the very opposite of self-control, end quote. I hate to engage in the ad hominem fallacy here, but I gotta do it because, you know, call me a child, but he started it. You want to talk about not being able to get laid, you want to talk about eating stuffing your fucking face with Cheetos and playing video games and masturbating all day. Look at the fucking picture of this guy and tell me he doesn't do all of those things. This guy has never touched a cold shower in his life. This guy has never lifted heavy in his life. And this guy, I wonder if this guy has ever gotten any pussy in his life. Okay? I'm just going to say it. It is what it is. Am I happy about having to stoop to his level? No, but I have to do it to make the point. You know, when he's going to criticize Mgtow for stuffing their face with Cheetos, and he's going to put a picture of himself like the picture that he supplied, this is what I mean when I say that some people lack such self-awareness that you wonder if you could even debate them. Whatever. All right, so it gets even dumber from here. The next three sentences, I'm not going to go through the next three sentences because he equates Mgtow to political lesbianism, and eventually he just calls us a bunch of homos. He says that we're going to start advocating political, he wouldn't be surprised if we start advocating political homosexuality. He talks about the masculine and the feminine as if he's some guru. Let's see. Yeah, so the de facto Marxism of most major Mgtow. As evidenced by, quote, our pathological obsession with bashing tradcons, that's our autistic term, he says, for anyone acknowledging the natural place of men and women, end quote. So he's basically insisting the natural place of men and women is to pair bond and then get married and what? You know, go through some weird cult-like ritual where we stand in front of an altar and a man asks us whether or not we're going to leave each other or whether we will be with one another in, you know, health and all whatnot. You know, whether or not we will be with one another for eternity, and then 80% of these things end in divorce. You know, the woman gets all dressed up in a frilly gown. You think this is natural to the human race? Well, I would disagree. Final sentence. Mgtows are just the social justice warriors of the manosphere, hysterical, intolerant of criticism, and driven entirely by emotion. I think that's pretty funny considering if this guy heard my response, he'd probably get hysterical, intolerant of criticism, and driven by emotion in his response. But again, that's just my intuition. He says that Mgtow's vision of masculinity is one in which men turn inward, refusing to accomplish anything of value, or engage with the world beyond, crying on the internet. Mgtow is no place for men who are proud of being men. So again, it's just this whole shaming. That's like be a man. You know, Raging Golden Eagle did a good video of this recently. What's being a man in this society? Well, it's anything anyone wants to manipulate you into doing. You know, if you're doing something that people don't like, you know, a real man would do this, would do something, whatever they want you to do. You know, it's just a nebulous term. He doesn't define what a real man does. He doesn't define the fundamental truth of human nature. He just, you know, internally contradicts himself for like 20 sentences. I mean, all, this is, you know, if this is the sort of, I guess, representation of the sort of person who would equate Mgtow to social justice warriors, and the sort of person who would, uh, you know, first of all, misunderstand Mgtow, but criticize Mgtow just as a creeping cult of male loserdom. I just think that, you know, Mgtow has nothing to fear.